Hello my friends, today we are talking about Topaz Denoise, my favorite programs when it comes to removing noise in my images. We will also do a full edit of this baby praying mantis. This is a praying mantis that it was about an hour old. It hatched from an egg that I had and I released it in my garden. So let's get started. We will do a full edit of this image. I will send it to Photoshop. We will add also some Topaz Sharpen AI. But the main focus of this video is to talk about Topaz Denoise. I am starting my edit from Lightroom because this is my normal workflow. Topaz Denoise works as a standalone program or as a plugin, for I use it for Lightroom and Photoshop. With my image selected, I have two options right now. I can process this in Topaz Denoise as a RAW file or as a TIFF file. If I want to process it as a TIFF file, it's very easy, and this is my preferred method 99.9% of the time. So with the image selected, I will just go to Photos. I'll go to Edit In and just go to Topaz Denoise AI. I will edit it as a copy, that way I still have my original file untouched. And then here it is on Topaz Denoise. Now we have to go through every button and slider so you understand how this program works, so you can better use it for your editing flow. After we'll edit this photo over here as a TIFF, as you see, it changed the format from a RAW. I had it into Lightroom over here, you can see ARW, that's my RAW format for Sony, and it changed it into a TIFF format. After we'll edit this and save it back into Lightroom, I will show you how to work with a RAW image if you want to process it as a RAW. So with this image selected, we see at the top we have these buttons. One, it says original. If I click on it, I see my original image before it's being processed. I let go, we'll see the image processed. Same thing if I click on my image itself, you can see the button lights up, so it's like the original post. And this is in single view mode. My next mode is the split view, which is my favorite. It gives you this line that you can drag left and right. On the left side you have your original image, and on the right you have your processed image. Then the next view is the side by side. That's just that you have the original on the left, the processed view on the right. Then you have the comparison view, and this takes all the models and puts them on these squares, where almost all the models, because if you see here we have 5 of them: standard, clear, low light, severe noise, and raw, but we only have 4 squares, so you cannot see all of them at once. You can see 4 of them, and if you want to see the 5th one, you look through this one and let's say, well, I know I do not want the clear view, so I'll just click on this and then I'll click on standard. And now I will be able to see my standard view, which I did not see before because I only had 4 squares. Now that you chose your view, you can zoom in at 200% or whatever you need. You can drag on straight on the image to adjust the part of the image you want to see, or you have this little square onto the navigator and you can move it around to choose the part that you want to see close up. Now, by looking at those 4 squares, for me, I always like the standard. It seems to be, for 99% of the time, seems to work the best for me. So I have standard. Right now, we went through the models. This is the model standard. Then you have clear. Clear seems to reduce a little bit less of a noise, but it's good for if you have ISO really low. But it will add a little bit more sharpening. Then you have low light, severe noise, and raw. We'll work with raw a little bit when I will show you how to bring your image from Lightroom into a raw format. Then you have model preferences. This is the auto button. So if I turn it off, I have to go and choose which model I like and then remove the noise and enhance sharpness all manually. If I click this on button, the Topaz Denoise is analyzing my image and chooses which one of these models works best for my image. In this case, it did choose standard, and also what are the settings to remove noise and enhance sharpness, and it chose 15 and 41. Now, in my experience, Topaz Denoise, it's a little bit aggressive with adding sharpness, and especially since I'm planning on bringing this image into Topaz Sharpen AI, I do not want this much sharpness, so I will reduce the sharpness to about, 17. If you've been watching my tutorials for a while, you will know when I do my denoising, I pretty much keep it in standard, and I'll go remove noise and enhance sharpness. I'll keep both of them at 15, and that seems to work for most of my images. As a disclaimer, I do not shoot at very high ISO. I usually keep my ISO between 100 and about 1000. Pretty much never go over 1000. But now we know what these view modes are. You have the zoom over here. You can fit to screen, 50%, 100, 200, 400. And if you need anything in between, you can use this slider and zoom like this as much as you need. So we know what these models are. Then we have the automatic or non-automatic, like manual mode over here at the bottom. We can choose how much noise we want to remove. If you feel like the program did not remove enough noise as you would want, then you will increase this amount and you can remove more and more noise. And then also, if you want to add more sharpening because you don't like to do sharpening in a different program and post, then you can add your more sharpening over here, enhance sharpness. We also have these bottom sliders, post-processing. This is recover original detail and color noise reduction. Recover original details is for when, let's say, the program, you used it on auto and it was a little bit aggressive with removing noise, and your image, maybe it's too soft, too smooth, then you can bring up this slider to the right and it will bring back some of that noise, some of the details from the original image. I don't feel I never have to use that because most of the time I do use it in manual and I choose just the right amount that works for my image. Color noise reduction. This is for when you have color noise in your image. Most modern cameras do not produce color noise. I find I've never had to remove color noise in one of my images. Noise, if you do not notice, comes in two different forms. There is luminance noise and color noise. Luminance noise is the typical one and is the one that comes in a form of grain. Luminance color noise, it's grainy, just like luminance noise, but it has a color to it, almost like chromatic aberration. It has that purple, green, yellow color to it. And hopefully you don't have to use this slider. You have a more modern camera. So now we know what all these sliders do. Let's move to the bottom, and we have this mask. And if you click on the mask, then a mask dialog appears. You have a brush that you can add to your mask. You can take away from your mask. And this is your brush settings. You can increase or decrease the size, the softness, opacity. You have edge aware. And then let's say, for example, when would you use this? Let's say you edit an image of a wildlife and you're reducing the noise onto the image, but you do not want to reduce the noise from the eye of your bird, let's say, because sometimes when you reduce noise, it will soften things a little bit and you want to keep your eye very sharp. Well, in that case, you'll go to subtract and take a brush. I'll make it smaller and you'll paint over the eye of your bird. This is not a bird, but we'll pretend it is. And now you're removing the noise in the entire image except the eye. I am going to clear this mask. You see we have the modify for the mask here. You can clear it or you can invert it if you need so. For the overlay, we have always show overlay, and I have this checked because I do like to see my overlay. And for overlay color, it is by default set to red. But let's say you are editing a red flower and you want to have a different color overlay to see where your mask is. Then you can click on this and choose any color from this color wheel. Like you might want to go with cyan or green or something just to, be able to see it and see what you're working with. You also have overlay opacity. And if you increase that to 100%, you'll pretty much not see your subject. So let's see. If I increase it, well, now we're not seeing our overlay because I do not have a mask on it. So let's see. I will add a mask. I'll add it over the eye. And you see how we can still see through it because the opacity of the mask, it's only a 52%. If I would increase the mask opacity to 100%, you cannot see through it and you cannot see where you're applying your mask. So it's good to have it somewhere in the 50% so you can see what's underneath and you can make a better mask. I will clear the mask because in this example, I do not need a mask. I'll click cancel. We're not applying a mask. And now we are back to regular settings. So let's see. We decided we're going to go with standard I would keep the remove noise to 15 and I will decrease the sharpness to 15 for me, and you see the model automatically went from auto to manual because I chose all these settings manually. So now that we are done editing this image, I will just click apply and it will automatically be sent back into Lightroom. And there we are. This is our TIFF file, which is the one we worked with in Denoise and we sent it back. And the one next to it, this is our original raw file. Now I am going to show you how to process your image from Lightroom as a raw image. In order to process the raw image, which sometimes is necessary to do because especially if you find that using it as a TIFF file or a JPEG, you might get a little bit of pixel bending, then you want to process it as a raw, and that helps a lot with it. So to do so, you have to right click on your raw image and just go to Show in Finder. Then Finder will open up and it will highlight the image you have selected, and with the image selected, just pick it up and drop it into Topaz Denoise. Then once the image is open into Topaz Denoise, you can process it as a raw file. So we'll click raw and we'll choose a few settings. Let's see, we'll choose remove noise, maybe 17. And we'll keep 18 for the enhanced sharpness. Once you're done doing your edits and you are removing the noise that you want to remove, click on Save Image and then keep the default settings and just Save Image. So now when we go back to Lightroom, you will see that the image did not pop up next to our raw image that we had in Lightroom. So where is our image? When we worked with our image as a TIFF file, then we've got the image right next to my original image, but now it did not came in here. So in order to bring it back into Lightroom, if you remember, we had to send it from Finder. So to bring it back into Lightroom, you have to right click on your album and go to Synchronize folder. And then synchronize, and here is our image coming back as a raw. And it says Denoise raw. So now when I go back to my album, here is my image and it is the same 149 file Denoise raw. So now let's move to part 2 of this tutorial, which is editing my image. First, I would like to go to my mask, select subject, and I just want to brighten my subject a little bit because it was a little bit dark. Something like that looks good to me. Get out of masking, and now I want to work with my white balance. My white balance looks a little bit too warm to me, so I will just bring it down a little bit, not too much. Something like that. And white balance looks good. I'm going to add some contrast. Maybe bring down a little bit of the highlights. Open up the shadows a little bit. Maybe add some whites. That looks good to me, and bring down the blacks a little bit. Great. Let's see, so far this is our image before and after. I think it's looking better. I will add some texture and somewhere around 19, 20. We'll go with 20. I will add some clarity, 21. I will add some vibrance, maybe around 28. And let's see. Maybe I'll bring down the saturation a little bit since I added a lot of vibrance. That looks good so far. I want to work on these greens because they are just a little bit too yellow. So I am going to go into the HSL. I'll go to hue and move the greens a little bit towards cyan, maybe around 23. And that looks better. But now they are too saturated, so I want to go into the saturation and just bring down the green saturation, pretty aggressive, maybe something -54. That looks good to me. I can increase the saturation on yellow and oranges because that's part of my praying mantises, so I want to like stand out. And then I'll move into luminance and increase the yellow and orange luminance just because I wanted to see it better. So there you go. That just makes it stand out a little bit more. We are doing great. Next, I will move down to sharpening, and I'll just add a little bit of sharpening, holding down Option to create a mask. I only want to sharpen my praying mantis, not the background. And then remove chromatic aberration and enable profile correction. Now I would like to add a crop to this image, and I think I will do an 8 by 10 crop, and I'll do it into a portrait orientation. So I want to put my bug kind of in the middle, bring it down a little bit, and that looks excellent to me. Accept these changes, and now we will take this image into Photoshop. Command E to send it into Photoshop. And now I want to work a little bit on the color of the eye and maybe the sharpening. Let's do the sharpening in Topaz Sharpen AI. Command J to duplicate my layer. I hold down Z and click this 100 to zoom it at 100% so I can see what I'm doing. And with this layer selected, you know what? The face of the praying mantis is a little bit too bright color, so I'm gonna bring it down a little bit. I will use the TK8 Luminosity Mask, and I'll just choose, let's see. I just want the face to get a little bit darker. So it looks like maybe I'll go with Luminosity Mask number 2, and I will output that as curves adjustment. Just bring it down a little bit just to make it not so bright on the face. We'll get a little bit more detail. And you see that is the before and after. Before and after. Much better. Now I will flatten this image. To flatten your image, you can just right click on the layer and then click flatten. But because I use the TK8, I just use the shortcut flatten over here. And now Command J to duplicate it again, and I will add a little bit of saturation to that eye. So I will make a hue saturation adjustment layer. I will increase the saturation. Maybe I'll even make it a little bit more blue. Something like that. And now I will inverse the mask by doing Command I, and then I will just paint with the brush. B for the brush. I'm painting with white to reveal my effect. I'm just painting on the eye just to bring back some of that, you know, saturation. There you go. I went a little bit too much, so I'll do Z and just remove it from the water drop. And this is our before and after for the eye, and I think that looks better. I'm gonna add a little bit on this side too. There you go. Great. I will flatten my image again, Command J to duplicate it, and let's add some sharpness to it. I will go to Filter, Topaz Lab, and then I will use Sharpen AI. And now we are in the comparison view, and we have to wait for all this update so we can see the updated views. This takes a little bit of time. If you use Topaz Sharpen AI, then you know it's not the fastest program, and you just have to be patient with it. And now this is our updated view. Now I'm going to go to 200% zoom just so I can see exactly which one is the sharper on my eye. And it's updating again because every time you touch something, Topaz feels it needs to, you know, do an updated preview. And now by looking at the image, I can see the motion blur normal is probably the sharpest out of all for this image. So now the trick is I don't want to apply all this sharpness to the whole image because that's just going to bring back some of the noise into my image. So I just want to selectively sharpen, and I will open this mask dialog over here and click on the add, and I just want to add this to the face, and some of these drops over here. We'll only sharpen those. And somehow I lost my image there. I'll go to fit to screen and make sure that I add this to my mask. All right, those are the only parts I care about sharpening. So with this, I will apply the mask. and then click apply, and this will apply to our image all the sharpening, and it will send it back into Photoshop. And now we return back in Photoshop and we have our sharpened image. This is the before Sharpen AI. This is after. You can see the detail into the eye and the water drop and into the face and mouth. Let's see this before. This is the before and after. Command 0 to fit to screen, and I am pretty happy with the image right now. So I will just flatten it and then I will go to File, Close and Save. And this will send it back into Lightroom where we started the whole processing. And now this is our image back in Lightroom where we started the whole processing thing. And this is our original image. You can see the 149. That's what we started with originally. And this is our final edited image. We can maybe even add a little bit of vignette to draw the attention more towards the center. And then maybe add on mask. We'll add a radial gradient and we'll start it from the center just to brighten it a little bit, not too much, maybe like that, and bring down the highlights so we're not blowing out any highlights. And that is it for today. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Skyler Ewing and I will see you in my next video.